Welcome to the desert of the
God, could turn the bloody thing off. Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tom Shuri, and this is Zero News. I am joined today with a man who always has a plan, the man who always has a smile, which is why I don't take him to funerals. But beyond that, always the man with the middle ground and the middle sense and the common sense, which is, I think, what we need right now. So with some with some of his inside knowledge, and as I've always said, my belief is he's absolutely the best orator in the movement. We could do with the chat with Richard Inman. So without further ado, let's bring in the man himself, Richard Inman. Welcome back to Zero News, my friend.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom. It's good to be back, and I love a good funeral, as long as it's one of my enemies' funerals. You know, your enemies' funerals are the best funerals to go to, and you know, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like an old IRA man's funeral to make you smile. You know, so anyway.
Absolutely.
I'm loving the intro there as well, Tom. It was kind of like we were getting introduced to some sort of UFC fight, you know. So I was not expecting Conor McGregor to pop up somewhere, you know.
Yeah, it wasn't slightly over the top at all, was it?
Love it, mate. Love it. I think it's class. Brilliant.
Well, obviously, I don't know what part of Ireland you live in. I don't know if it's too small a part to ask you about, but obviously,
I live close to Belfast. I live in the Greater Belfast area. So,
so if anybody doesn't know, Richard still lives in Northern Ireland. You served in Northern Ireland, and obviously, all of us know things like we all understand Bloody Sunday. We all understand the IRA. Many of us lived through it. However, we've seen some things happen recently with Europe, and I think Richard, where would be a good place to start is if you could just give us the background on what I often term, and I know you do as well, as our surrender to the IRA.
Well, it started with the Norman Conquest, of course, but we'll not go that far back. But the reality is, what happened in the late 1980s. The British government had a policy of very robustly resisting terrorism. Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister. Now, Margaret Thatcher was good in some ways, and in other ways she was very, very bad. She was very, very bad if you lived in the north of England. It was also very bad for unionism as a whole. In 1985, she signed the Anglo-Irish Agreement, which gave the Republic of Ireland a say somewhat in Northern Ireland's future. And that caused, at that time, a mass uprising of loyalist and unionist people in 1985. There were protests, there were riots, policemen's homes were attacked. And what that did, that reinvigorated a young and militant loyalism, many of whom joined paramilitary groups and basically got involved in the conflict in the late 80s. That had a double effect. On one hand, obviously, it caused a lot of mayhem and a lot of heartache. But on the other hand, part of that loyalist campaign became very, very adept at targeting Republicans, IRA people, and IRA people's families. And what that did was that basically put the IRA on the back foot. At the same time as that, British undercover agents, run by OC Special Branch, MI5, and the Force Research Unit, had penetrated all these terrorist organizations, including the IRA at the highest level. The IRA was penetrated to Army Council level, so you had people sitting on the Army Council who were also sitting in meetings with MI5 and fully briefing MI5.
Yeah, you can see the reconstructions of that now, can't you?
Absolutely, and the security services. And to all intents and purposes, even though the IRA was still able to carry out a lot of operations, they were on the back foot. I think the hammer blow against the IRA in the 80s was in 1987, when soldiers from 22 SAS, police officers from a specialist police unit called E4 Alpha, and I think the special support unit was still on the go then as well, basically counter-ambushed an IRA ambush. The IRA were coming in to wipe out a police station in Myanmar. They sent a team. Let me get this right. I think there was at least there was either 8 or 9 IRA men in the team. They had a bomb in a JCB. They were fully armed with G3 rifles and AK-47s. Their idea was to go to the police station, storm the police station, kill all the police officers inside it, and blow the police station to smithereens. Wow. The IRA ambushed them, and all the terrorists were killed in the ensuing firefight. A couple of police officers were killed. I think one SAS man was no police officer were killed. One policeman was injured. I think one SAS man was injured when the bomb exploded, and all the terrorists were killed in the firefight. That was a real turning point for the IRA, because the unit that was engaged in that action was one of the most militant units within the IRA. It was the East Tyrone Brigade. They'd been responsible for countless sectarian murders. They killed many off-duty policemen. They killed many off-duty soldiers. I believe they were also responsible for the massacre at T-Ban, where innocent workmen that had been working on a security force base were blown up in a bomb attack. So they were very, very dangerous and wicked and evil men. And once they were wiped out, the IRA realized that they had no chance of winning militarily. And
right, so that they did realize that.
Oh, absolutely. The IRA knew that they couldn't win. They thought they could fight the British to a stalemate.
Right.
Thatcher and the members of the security forces and the top military intelligence people believed that they could actually defeat the IRA. And
how strong, because this is something I'd never hear anyone really ask, but how, obviously a conflict is always judged by what the leaders say, but how strong was the actual animosity on the streets and things?
Oh, it was vicious and still can be. It was palpable. I guess the only way of explaining it, I mean, I don't know if you remember the demonstration we did in 2017, where we had 70,000 veterans and
a bit before my time, but I watched it,
yeah, and football lads. The anger then among the football lads and the veterans, because of what the Islamic terrorists had done at the Ariana Grande concert, was at boiling point, and that was, again, that there was real potential there in the UK for something similar to what happened in Northern Ireland to happen in the United Kingdom. One of the things I was very mindful of when I was involved in that movement at that time was to give people a political way out, so that the voices that were some overtly saying we need to take action about this were pointed in a different direction, because obviously I'd seen what happened in Northern Ireland. Yeah. You know, I went there in the 80s at the height of the Troubles, and I know where that leads, and I just warned people. I said, look, you can do what you want. It's nothing to do with me, but my counsel would be, let's go down a political route, and that's of course why we,
I never forget the images for anybody that grew up during my time. I never forget the images of the two soldiers that backed into an IRA funeral accidentally.
Yeah, I mean, what happened there? That soldiers from my regiment were on the ground that day in West Belfast. It was a funeral. I can't remember whether it was after Michael Stone. I think it was possibly after Michael Stone, who was a loyalist paramilitary. He basically attacked an IRA funeral with a handgun and grenades, and I think he killed 2 or 3 people. One was an IRA man called Kevin Brady. I think that was Kevin Brady's funeral when those 2 corporals were ambushed and murdered. And it was horrific. And I mean, the reality is that sentiment was there. And even now, I mean, me talking about this now as an ex-British soldier living in Northern Ireland is still dangerous. You know, that's the reality of the situation. There's still people in this country that would kill me because of the job I did 30 years ago. That's a reality of the situation that we live in now. Obviously, we all take precautions. We have security. We do our drills, but there is still potential for violence in Northern Ireland from Republican paramilitaries, because the dissident Republicans are still there. Again, they're heavily infiltrated by the security services, but they're still there. But you're asking about how we got to the situation we're in now.
Yeah, the road to
sure.
surrender.
So basically, to all intents and purposes, the IRA had been fought to a standstill, and with one big push, the IRA could have been defeated. And
they could have been defeated. Actually, stopped. You think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Margaret Thatcher had the will to do it because of what happened at the.
There wouldn't have been like split the group or resurrection. It wouldn't have been something that had just gone on and on. It could have actually been stopped.
It could have been stopped. I mean, you've got to understand. You see, the amount of people that are actually involved in killing in terms of paramilitary groupings is comparatively small.
Right.
So,
yeah. Because they've got an army.
You would be talking probably on the IRA side at any one time, no more than 250 activists actually actively involved in terrorism. And in terms of actually people that were going out and doing the shooting and the killing, you would be talking probably no more than 30 to 50 people who'd actually been involved in shootings and so on and so forth. So the amount of activists that were actually involved in active murder and mayhem was comparatively small. The organizations were big in terms of logistics and support base and so on and so forth, but the actual people that were doing the killing was a fairly small number, and that was really the same on both sides.
Right.
You know, the conflict could have been stopped if the people that had been doing the killing had been dealt with. Let's just put it that way, because one of the problems that people don't understand is, and this is one of the problems IRA and Sinn Féin have got, many of the top people in their organizations, the only reason they're still living and breathing today is because they were working for the British state. It's as simple as that.
I've always wondered. Yeah, okay.
Well, I'll give you an example. This, I mean, not that I want to quote the BBC. The BBC did a rather good series of documentaries about the Troubles. It only aired in Northern Ireland. But one of the statements they made, which again, from everything I've read and seen and been told by people who were heavily involved in that end of things, is true, is that there was a burglary at the Castlereagh Holding Centre, which was basically where Special Branch were based, RUC Special Branch. The IRA burgled that and stole all the information on who were informants in the IRA in Belfast. And when they deciphered who were the informants, they realised they didn't have enough gunmen left in Belfast to shoot the people that were actually informants, because all of those gunmen were informants. And I could name them. I'm not going to name them because obviously you would end up dragged into a libel court in a heartbeat. But I could name them. I could tell you where the people live and what businesses they operate today.
Before we carry on with the descent to surrender, one question I've always wanted to know. I mean, I know it's obvious at the time, but looking back now, the IRA, especially even the way you've described them, seemed like they were very serious. You said yourself that the feeling on the ground was palpable. Why did they give warning to some of their attacks? I mean, it sounds almost humanitarian, but why did they do that?
because of the discussions I've had with people in the last 30 years, I've met many people that were involved, and I've met people that were involved in IRA violence as well as loyalist violence. And was, believe it or not, there was a certain code of ethics. I know that sounds probably hard to believe, and I'm not
I think people need to hear it.
Apologizing for the IRA. I think they were a barbaric and monstrous organization that should have been defeated, and they could have been defeated, and that opportunity was missed. I think Sinn Féin are basically as bad politically as the IRA was when it came to violence. They did have a code of ethics of a sort. I mean, if let's say, for example, they targeted you, Tom, and you were a British soldier, and they were going to target you with an under-vehicle booby trap, they would recce your location. They would make sure that it was you getting in the car. They would make sure you were getting in the car on your own. They would have to make sure that you got in the car 3 times on your own before they put a bomb under the car. So they would. Right. There
really was a code of conduct.
Yes. Having said that, when we look at what happened in Enniskillen, where they massacred 9 or 11 innocent people, soldiers, nurses, civilians that were Remembrance Sunday. On that attack, they were also the same day, believe this or believe this not, they were planning to target a boys' brigade parade, which is children between the age of 5, 16. They were going to bomb a boys' brigade parade on the same day. So
wow.
even though sometimes they would act ethically, obviously when you're planting bombs indiscriminately, there's nothing ethical about that.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And they were, you know, this myth that they were an army. They were not an army. They were a terrorist organization made up of psychopaths, hate-filled anti-British bigots, and people that hated the British and hated the union between Northern Ireland and the British so much that they were prepared to kill thousands of people. And the other thing we've got to remember is that the IRA, I mean, one of the sickening things about the so-called peace process, and it's a terrible misnomer and misuse of language, but one of the terrible things about what I call the surrender process is that the vilification of the British Army. I mean, you mentioned Bloody Sunday. Bloody Sunday was one incident where I think 12 or 13 nationalists were killed in the Bogside. Again, I really, to be honest with you, I don't know exactly what happened there. I wasn't there on the ground. The only people who know for sure what happened are the soldiers on the ground and the IRA men on the ground on that day. But you would think when you listen to the news and when you see the media coverage, and this is again where the media is so twisted, you would think that the only people that ever killed anyone in the Troubles were the British Army. The British Army, I think, killed about 450 people during the Troubles. The IRA, as far as I can remember, I'm doing this just from memory, killed well over 2,500 people, maybe more than that. So,
and arguably, the British Army were in an impossible position.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'll give you an example. I was on a foot patrol in Belfast one evening, and I came out of an army base. And as I came out of an army base, an IRA man ran across. Hi, Danny. An IRA man ran across the waste ground in front of us with a rifle, balaclava, and a combat jacket on. We didn't have time to engage and shoot that target. He I mean, he doesn't know how lucky he was. Wow. It was just the timing. It was literally a split-second thing. If we'd have been there a minute earlier, we'd have had him in our sights, and we'd have been able to engage him and shoot him. Now, whenever he disappeared into the ether, and we followed up afterwards, we couldn't find him. He'd gone. He disappeared. If we'd have shot him, he was about 200 yards away. If we'd have shot him and killed him, by the time we'd have got to his body, the balaclava would have gone, the G3 rifle that he was carrying would have gone, and the mantra would have been that we just shot an innocent villain.
Wow.
And without a doubt, we would have been getting investigated by the historical inquiries team. Now, that's not something that I've heard about. That's something that I experienced. I'll give you another example. A friend of mine was in an OP in Belfast, watching a hijack a bus, and he had a sniper rifle. He had beads on this guy. The guy had a balaclava and a handgun. Exactly the same situation. The target wasn't engaged because we knew that if he'd have been engaged, by the time the police or the army had got there, the mask and the gun would have gone. So the idea of of a gung-ho shoot-to-kill policy where soldiers were shooting people willy-nilly for nothing is complete mythology. Now, did some soldiers make mistakes? Of course. It was a 30-year conflict. I think we had something like 150,000 soldiers through the streets of Northern Ireland. Did some soldiers get it wrong? Absolutely. Did they deliberately get it wrong? Some of them, possibly. Who knows? But the reality is the vast majority of soldiers that served in Northern Ireland served with discipline, with fire control discipline. They didn't shoot when they could have shot, even within the rules of engagement. And this vilification of the British Army in Northern Ireland is a rewriting of history by leftists, by the leftist media, and of course by Irish Republican terrorists and their sympathisers. So that's because
I think some of the revulsion towards the military in general of any host country that seems to be going around the world at the moment, it's also a kind of naivety as to the reality of what has to be done, as opposed to how these people view the world.
Exactly.
I've heard it expressed before, and again, I'm one of the good reasons to be able to talk to you about this, because I'm not up to scratch on this subject, and I should be. But I've always sort of been led to believe that Blair and a mixture of Blair and Clinton was what really was what enabled the surrender process to happen.
Yeah. Basically, what happened was when Margaret Thatcher was ousted from Downing Street by the Euro fanatics in the Tory party, and you know, we got John Major as Prime Minister. Of course, it was John Major that took us into the European Union. John Major's got off scot-free. I mean, a lot of people talk about Tony Blair being a traitor and betraying the nation, and I believe that's absolutely true. But John Major was the precursor to Tony Blair. John Major was a globalist, still is. John Major railroaded the United Kingdom fully into the European Union. He all the treaties. And John Major was the architect of the so-called peace process, or the surrender process, that took place in Northern Ireland. And what John Major did was he started a ball rolling that Blair picked up and ran with, and made it even worse. I mean, it was bad. What Major did was bad, but what Blair did was a lot worse, because when Major came to power, the security establishment was taking the fight to the IRA. The security establishment, as far as I'm led to believe, I'm not going to name the people, but there were people within certain groups on the loyalist side that were working for the security establishment to a certain agenda to basically challenge the IRA and put the IRA on the back foot. Now, I've been told that again by very good sources. I'm not going to name the people. The people that are involved now are dead, but I've been reliably informed that those people were working for the security forces, and they were called the tip of the spear, and they were really taking the fight to the IRA. And it was exactly the same with the SAS, the undercover soldiers of FRU and 14 Intelligence Company, and RUC Special Branch and the special police units as well. They were offensively targeting the IRA, so that the IRA had absolutely no room to maneuver. I'll give you an example. The leader of the IRA's internal security unit was a man called Freddie Scappaticci, and his code name was Steak Knife. And his boss was a guy called John Joe McGee. John Joe McGee was a member of the Special Boat Service. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility. We know that Scappaticci was working for the British state, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility that his boss was also working for the British state as well. So you had the men that were in charge of internal security, in other words, interrogating people they believed to be informers and then shooting them, and they were both working for the British state, along with other people in that unit, like Brendan Davison, who was working for RUC Special Branch. So the whole of the IRA was completely compromised and gutted, if you like. Tony Blair comes along, and the Belfast was basically wrung out of the unionist parties in Northern Ireland. The DUP stood against it. Ian Paisley very bravely stood against it and was roundly condemned and vilified. And to my shame, I was convinced by the nonsense that Blair talked and different unionist politicians in Northern Ireland talked. I signed up to the Good Friday Agreement. I voted for it when we had a referendum. similar to similar to the Brexit referendum, and it's something like got carried by about 70% of the population. I deeply regret basically voting, and that's one of the reasons I actually became involved in politics, when I realised how much of a betrayal the Good Friday Agreement was.
Wow.
Tony Blair wrote a letter to the people of Northern Ireland. It was published in the newsletter, where he said, not one prisoner would be released from prison. Now, these were mass murderers. These were IRA mass murderers.
Yeah.
They weren't
Irredeemable.
These IRA men that were in prison were not freedom fighters. They were mass murderers. They planted bombs that killed children. They killed off-duty policemen and soldiers in front of their wives and children. These were mass psychopathic murderers. And we were told by Blair, talk about Tony Blair lying, he wrote a letter, it's published in the newsletter, and he said, not one prisoner will be released until all of the weapons of the IRA are given up. Within a year of that agreement being signed, all of the prisoners were out. It took 10 years to get the IRA to supposedly decommission.
And people knew, didn't they? When he made that promise, people knew that one way or another that wasn't going to be kept.
Well, I mean, I was foolish. I believed it. That was back when I used to believe that British politicians told the truth. But obviously, fast forward 30 years, and we know what a barefaced liar Tony Blair was. And of course, all of this was part of devolution, which whether it's Scotland or Wales or Northern Ireland, has been designed. And this is where we need to get, kind of fast forward away from the troubles. The whole process of devolution has been designed to destroy the United Kingdom. And
sorry.
Yeah, no, go on ahead, Tom. You want to say something?
I was just going to say, so if we then turn our attention by what some might call, and I deliberately leave out the word Nazi here, but what some might call the continuation of Germany by other means, i.e. Europe. Yep. 3 strikes, you're out, Richard. And obviously I don't know if you've ever seen, by the way, I don't know if you've ever seen them draw the United Kingdom on a map, but they generally don't include Wales, or they'll just cut Scotland. It's very disrespectful the way that it's done. Yep. But so now with them stepping in with the Northern Ireland thing, the Northern Ireland thing,
I guess if we we'll fast forward about 30 years, because what I wanted to do there was set the scene, and for viewers in England that aren't aware of the full situation in Northern Ireland, the people, the good people of Northern Ireland. I was saying, that I heard another ex-soldier use when he was making a speech, and he said, I'll stand with anyone that stood against the IRA. And that's very much my mantra. So it doesn't matter what your religious background, it doesn't matter where you come from. If you're a Catholic from the Falls Road and you stood against the IRA, well, then I'll stand with you. If you're still standing against the IRA, I'll still stand with you. But the reality is that what's happened in the last 18 months, the way the European Union, what's happened is basically the European Union has annexed part of the United Kingdom. Yes. I mean, remember when Putin went trundling into Crimea and annexed Crimea? Do you remember the scandal and the uproar, and everybody was spitting blood? Well, what the European Union is trying to do is trying to split up the United Kingdom. It's I believe deliberately and with the complete what should we say, and complete and full support of Sinn Féin, of the SDLP, of the Alliance Party, which I believe is a closet Irish Republican party now anyway. So the Alliance Party, Sinn Féin, the SDLP, and the Irish government have conspired with the European Union to annex Northern Ireland. That's how serious this is.
I agree.
And it became very, very clear that Boris Johnson did not have a clue that this was the case, because when he made that agreement with Leo Varadkar, I mean, Leo Varadkar must have kissed the Blarney Stone before he met Boris Johnson, and then goodness knows he must have kissed Boris, because Boris seemed very, very amorous with him, So Leo Varadkar basically said to Boris, unless you go with this protocol, there's going to be violence in Northern Ireland. There's going to be a border between North and South, and it's going to be your fault, and there's going to be bloodshed, and painted this dreadful picture. Well, my question to Leo Varadkar would have been a very simple one. If the IRA's decommissioned the weapons, and we're told that the dissident Republicans are tiny little splinter groups, who's going to do the fighting? That's the first question I would have asked Leo Varadkar. Who's going to do this violence? Sure, the IRA supposedly totally signed up.
Absolutely.
I use Sinn Féin and IRA as intermingled terms because, as I think it was Margaret Thatcher said, they are inextricably linked. They're joined at the hip.
Yeah.
Sinn Féin and the IRA.
Is there a difference, or is it just that one's the political face, one's the military face?
I mean, it's political. Sinn Féin are the political wing, but Sinn Féin do what the IRA Army Council tell them to do.
Right.
The IRA Army Council is made up of terrorists who are blood on their hands, and Sinn Féin does their bidding, does their political bidding. That's the structure of that's not me saying that. That's what MI5 will tell you.
And is there still, sorry to just regress a little bit, but just from a people perspective, is there still religious tensions and things in Northern Ireland and that now, or is that part eased down somewhat?
Well, probably not so much religious tensions. I mean, there never really were religious tensions. It was more.
Was that just the excuse?
It was about identity.
Right.
I mean, we kind of invented identity politics before it was, and that's why I'm so against identity politics, because it's so dangerous. But the reality of the situation is that it's whether people believe in a united Ireland and have a associate themselves with the Republic of Ireland, or whether people believe in the United Kingdom and associate themselves with the United Kingdom. That's what the conflict's about. It's about national identity. Of course, religion is kind of tied up in that, but nowhere near as much as it used to be. And now there's a lot of people that would not really identify as either. But the problem that we've got with the protocol is, one, it cuts Northern Ireland off for the rest of the United Kingdom. Where do you live, Tom? Where's your
Southampton, so I'm dead centre of the country, right at the very south.
Can you imagine if let's say France had a claim on Southampton, and after Brexit you were told nobody in Southampton could get soil. Now think about this: you couldn't get soil from anywhere else in the United Kingdom into Southampton without it being checked at the border. If the soil comes in, it's not going to be allowed in. You're not allowed to bring guide dogs in. If you're a blind person in Northern Ireland, you cannot bring a guide dog in.
My first reaction would be to wonder what the hell we'd done so wrong to be treated that way.
Absolutely. And the anger on the ground amongst loyalist people, to say it's at boiling point would be an underestimation. Now, but you see, one of the things you've got to understand as well about Northern Irish unionists and the Protestant unionist loyalist community, on the whole, they're fairly law-abiding. They work hard. They love Britain. They love the United Kingdom. They very much feel just as much a part of the United Kingdom as in fact, probably more so than half the inhabitants of London, to be quite honest with you.
Yes, that's probably an understatement.
Yeah, because we've been British for 300 years, not for 3 minutes. But so the reality is that the people of Northern Ireland are extremely patriotic, extremely proud of the country, and when they get backed into a corner, when loyalists and unionists get backed into a corner, and I count myself as part of that community by marriage, not by birth, but when we get backed into a corner, the anger that boils up, I get enraged, and I'm an Englishman, but I get enraged at the treatment of the people of Northern Ireland by the government in Westminster, by the government in Dublin, by the European Commission, and by the diabolical politicians in Sinn Féin, IRA, the SDLP, and the Alliance Party, who are anti-British extremists. These people hate the British. They hate the British state. They're quite happy to take money from the British state, but they hate the British state. They
And
hate
people don't.
they hate that flag behind you, Tom. They hate it with a passion.
Yeah, they do. They do. And people don't realize as well that this hatred of that has been going on. That was going on during World War II from the left, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's not new.
It's not new. It's not new at all. It's not new at all. And we've also got to remember that the IRA collaborated with the Nazis during the Second World War.
Right.
And we talk about Nazis. The IRA classed themselves as nationalists, and they classed themselves as socialists, as do the SDLP. Well, the last lot of people that called themselves nationalists and socialists, as far as I remember, it didn't end up too well, did it?
That's right. That's right. It should have been the lesson of the 20th century.
Exactly.
So you've got now. Sorry.
Do you know something, Tom? The only acceptable bigotry in the United Kingdom is hatred of the British. That's the reality.
Absolutely, yeah.
If you're that little sniveling little worm, across the border up in Edinburgh, that creature that looks like an emaciated version of the Crankies, of Jimmy Cranky. What's her name? Sturgeon. She is not driven by a love for Scotland. She is driven by a complete loathing for anything that is English.
I was going to say, to sell your country out to Europe, to get away from Britain, you're not looking for independence, you're looking for something else. Exactly. And to me, that is based on hatred. And I will say to you, a lot of the people, I've spoken about this the other day, a lot of the people who live in Scotland have reached out via our channel and said, this is the government's view. Please don't, because...
Tom, this is the crux of the issue, right? And it's exactly the same in Northern Ireland and in I have friends in the Irish Republic that were once in Sinn Féin. They were in Sinn Féin involved in Sinn Féin. I can't say what the areas because it put them in danger. But these people are so angry with Sinn Féin because Sinn Féin used to be a Eurosceptic party, as did the SNP. Because how can you have an independent country that is then swallowed up by the European superstate, by people that don't even speak the same language as you, that don't use the same currency as you? They want to swallow up your country and take your country over.
And then you call that independence.
And that's exactly. That's not independence. What that is selling you birthright because of your bigotry. That's what they're doing. The Irish Republicans who support the European. Now, if you're an Irish Republican and you don't support the European Union, you want a genuine independent Ireland that's free of control from Britain and from the European Union. I don't agree with you. But at least you're keeping your integrity. You want
it's
it's
an honest proposition.
Exactly. Now, what these people are doing is they want to break free from the United Kingdom to be swallowed up by a European superstate that is not accountable, that is not democratic, that is going to take away your rights and is going to recruit your sons and your daughters into a European army to go and face off with Russia. Now, to me, that's not Scottish independence. And that's not Irish independence, and it's certainly not Welsh independence either. So these people, these so-called nationalists in Scotland, in Ireland, and in Wales, they are not driven by love of country. They are driven by hatred, pathological hatred of the British. In Ireland, that's everybody that identifies as British. They are driven by a pathological hatred of unionists and loyalists in Northern Ireland. In Scotland and Wales, it is driven by a pathological hatred of the English people. And it's reprehensible because for years, we lived together in peace. Until devolution, we lived together in peace and harmony. The United Kingdom was a great, free country until we joined the European Union and until we signed up to devolution, because that's all part of the plan to destroy the United Kingdom. And what I would always do when I do these feeds, I would appeal to the good people of Scotland, the people that I know in Scotland that love Scotland. Yes, they're proud Scotsmen. You know something? They love the United Kingdom. It's exactly the same in Northern Ireland. My friends that are Northern Irish, that they love Northern Ireland. but they love the United Kingdom, and that's
Yeah.
who, and you see all joined together and joined forces. And this is what I would say to English viewers. Please, English viewers, do not go down the road of petty nationalism. Don't sign up to the nonsense that the English Democrats are pumping out, because it's a mirror image of what the Scottish nationalists are doing and what the Sinn Féin IRA and the SDLP and the Alliance Party are doing in Scotland, Northern Ireland, and obviously Plaid Cymru in Wales. So I would say to my English friends, stand with the people of Ulster, because this is our greatest time of need for 30 years, without a shadow of a doubt. We are under a huge threat to be swallowed up by United Ireland. The threat is palpable, because once they have separated us from the rest of the United Kingdom in terms of customs, in terms of trade, it is a constitutional change, and it's against the very Good Friday Agreement that Blair and his minions got us all to sign up to. So it's even against that.
A lot of people threaten that breaking of that agreement will be what really sets things off.
Absolutely. Now here's the thing about this. I know that the anger among loyalist people in Northern Ireland, I know it's going to blow up. It's as simple as that. It's going to kick off, and unless they get rid of the protocol, it's going to kick off massively. And I don't know how it's going to end. I'm not involved in loyalist paramilitarism, but it is going to kick off. There's no doubt about it. Something is going to happen. Something has to happen to put pressure on the government. And I'm not advocating violence at all. I don't want to see violence.
No.
I've always advocated for lawful and peaceful protest to defeat these things. And this is where when this protocol was first signed up to, way back in 2019, we had protests. I was outside Downing Street with a banner saying get the EU out of Ulster. We had street protests in London, and we had patriots in London, and it filled me with pride that there was Englishmen who would stand outside Downing Street being harassed by the Metropolitan Police, but they were veterans, and they were civilians, Englishmen, proud, patriotic Englishmen standing with the people of Northern Ireland. And we actually had a day where we had a demonstration outside the EU Commission in Belfast. We had a demonstration outside the EU Commission in Wales. We had one in Scotland, and we had one in London, all on the same day. And people from those four countries that make up the United Kingdom stood together against this diabolical protocol. And I would just ask people of England that are watching this, start mobilizing. We know who's responsible for this. Michael Gove, the Northern Ireland Secretary, forget his name, it escapes me now. The Northern Ireland Secretary, I can give you his name, and you can put it in the comments afterwards. And of course, Bombay Boris are responsible for this. So it's Gove, Brandon Lewis, and Boris who are responsible for this in terms of the British government. I want to mobilise people in England, in their constituencies. Once lockdown's finished, I don't get people arrested for breaking lockdown, but once lockdown's finished, I want to mobilise people in England. And I want to ask my friends in England who've stood with me on all these demonstrations, stand with us on this, and let's get some demonstrations outside the constituency offices of Michael Gove, Brandon Lewis, which is Great Yarmouth. Michael Gove is somewhere in Surrey, and goodness knows where Boris has managed to get himself elected. Get outside their constituency offices, make as much noise as you possibly can. We can get banners printed, we'll get them down to you, and embarrass these Tories in front of their constituents and show them for what they are. They are Lundies, they are traitors. They might have got some form of Brexit, but it's no Brexit at all if we lose Scotland and we lose Northern Ireland. That's not Brexit if the United Kingdom gets split up.
Speaking of Brexit, when the news story for a lot of it was about the Northern Irish borders and that, and I always felt like, of all the issues, I felt like that they. Let me start again. Was it a warning sign all the way back then that of all the things that they found to have a problem with, it was the borders with Ireland? Was that a warning sign of what the EU's mindset was to come? And Is this all about, again, just creating a socialist agenda?
Yes, I mean, I think what the EU did was very, very sinister, devilish.
Very, very sorry. Very what? Sorry.
Very sinister and very devilish, because what they did was they weaponized the border. Now, you've got to understand, the British government had no intention of putting a hard border in Northern Ireland. There's never been a hard border in Northern Ireland. Yeah. People talk about a hard border during the Troubles. I was on the border during the Troubles, and I was in watchtowers and OPs that were on the mountains in South Armagh. And the reason those watchtowers were there was to stop terrorists bringing bombs across the border, attacking innocent farmers, Protestant farmers along the border, and assassinating soldiers and policemen. So the watchtowers were there to protect the border from terrorists coming across from the south of Ireland. If there was no terrorist problem, those watchtowers would never been there. And those watchtowers weren't built until the early 80s, and they were pulled down straight after the ceasefire. So there was no hard border. And there wouldn't have been a hard border in between Northern Ireland and the Irish Republic as a result of Brexit.
It was fear.
The only people that would have put a border there were the European Union. We weren't going to put a border there. It was the EU to protect their blessed single market. And this is why we've got the border down the Irish Sea. Now, Boris Johnson has caved on this. And unfortunately, what has to happen to put this right is there has to be such chaos and mayhem created right the way throughout these islands. In mainland UK, I'm not talking about violence, I'm talking about street protests and civil disobedience. There needs to be mass street protests and civil disobedience, not just in Northern Ireland. It needs to happen in the United Kingdom as well. People in the United Kingdom, in England and Scotland and Wales, that are patriots, have got to realise that this, if the protocol is allowed to stay, then that is the first step. It is the first nail in the coffin of the United Kingdom. It is the Trojan horse to destroy the United Kingdom. So it's not just Northern Ireland that's threatened by this. The whole of the United Kingdom is threatened by this. And what you'll end up with is England, outside of the EU, surrounded by a socialist Scotland, a socialist Wales, a Northern Ireland that will be in chaos. And all you'll be left with is a rump of England. And that will be the United Kingdom. That will be what we got from Brexit. Now, that's not what I voted for when I voted for Brexit.
Yeah. When I looked at, obviously we've seen rejections from Brexit.
You gathered that, you know.
All of them wrong. But when I look at Scotland, they've got to do a minimum bunch of things, including the size of their economy, even to qualify. They're one of those countries that would probably be the hardest done by joining, to be frank. I do think that England needs to be careful, in as much as I think that if we find ourselves in a position, you tell me what you think, if we find ourselves in a position where somebody is leaving, I think that we need to look at the mistakes of the European Union and treat them with proper respect, say thank you, and invite them back at any time. I think if you look at the way the European Union treated us from day go of leaving, even recently with them interfering with with Northern Ireland and that, even Remainers have turned on them, and they've seen them. And I think that it's important. I'm a unionist as well, by the way, Richard. So I truly believe in our brothers and sisters, Welsh, Irish, Scottish. I don't care. We've got a lot of hatred that's happened between us, 1,000 years of blood. It's a beautiful, complex history, and it's brought us to this point. Absolutely. So I'm very for it. And now I've lost my question and all of that.
I get what you were saying. I mean, basically, what you were saying was, should we treat them with respect? And absolutely, because the reality is, I've friends that are Scottish nationalists. I've worked with people who are Scottish nationalists. My ex-boss was a Scottish nationalist. My brother-in-law is a Scottish nationalist. So I have friends and family who are Scottish nationalists. I vehemently disagree with them on the political issue, and they know that. I mean, I'm as frank with them as I am with you. And obviously saying that to your boss can get yourself into all sorts of hot water. But the reality is that what we've got to do, and this is very important, I think, is throughout all these component parts of the United Kingdom, Boris is never going to do it. Boris is not going to win the argument. I mean, it's some bumbling Etonian coming up to Scotland and saying, "Oh, what are you talking about?"
Never going to wash.
It's not going to wash it.
Yeah.
What we need to do is at grassroots level, we need to win the argument.
Yes.
And the argument for staying in the United Kingdom is extremely strong. Now, in Northern Ireland,
grassroots rebel as well. Would you say that it's much more even? That there's ground to be won there that will make all the difference?
Yeah, sure. There is, absolutely. Now, I mean, obviously, I come across probably as a rabid extremist, so I'm probably not the right person to go and argue the case for the union. But the reality is that the argument for the union is so strong, and we've got to at a grassroots level persuade people that they're far better staying in the UK than leaving.
I agree.
That will be extremely difficult in Northern Ireland because of the tribal nature of Northern Ireland. It's the people in the middle ground that we've got to persuade, and this is the danger as well. I mean, this is the danger if there is actual violence, and that's why I'm saying what we need in Northern Ireland is peaceful, democratic civil disobedience. We need to go down the Martin Luther King Jr. route, not down the IRA route of trying to sort the problem out. So we've got to persuade people, first of all, that we can go and picket places. If you don't like a political party and its policies, go and picket the thing. Stand outside it, make some noise, make a nuisance of yourself, but you don't need to get involved in burning or shooting or bombing. You don't need to. There's a lot can be done.
That's an instant fast track to third world country.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Having said that, obviously there's a long history of political violence in Northern Ireland. So that's the default setting. And I have no influence. I'm a commentator. I have no influence over what people do. All I can do is give my commentary and my analysis to people in England and anybody that's watching to say, listen, why don't we try doing it this way? Why don't we try mass numbers on the streets, peacefully protesting, marching to areas of contention and basically making a nuisance of ourselves, but not getting involved in violence. And that's I think, once lockdown's over, that's the way to.
I think it's important that you, with the knowledge that you've got, make this point, because, as I said to you, I've spoken to people in Scotland, for instance, who said to me, we love English, don't be buying into, what you're hearing. And I think that the English have been bombarded over, I don't know, let's just say the last decade, with the idea that we hated universally by the Welsh, by the Irish, by the Scottish.
Let's be honest, Tom, the reality is a good lot of them do hate us. That's the sad truth.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong, I'm aware of that. Yeah.
Or else the nationalist parties wouldn't get such a big vote. So
absolutely, yeah.
The hardcore nationalist, the hardcore Irish Republican IRA supporter, the hardcore SNP supporter, the hardcore Plaid Cymru. I mean, I was in a pub in Wales a few months ago doing a job for the movement, and basically I was in there with a couple of colleagues that we were shooting some footage, and the people in the pub were the most obnoxious, bigoted, violent people I've ever come across in my life. They were just unbelievable. They spoke Welsh the whole time deliberately because they knew that we were English and that all the time. I don't know. But it was like that. American Werewolf in London where two guys walk into the pub and what they call up, Danny, what Brian Glover standing there and he looks at them and says, "You made me miss." It's kind of like that. The whole place went quiet, but anyway, but yeah. So I mean, the reality is there is a lot of bigotry, and that needs to be challenged. Because if it's not acceptable to be anti-Irish, which it isn't, it's wrong to.
No, it's not. Yeah.
Right? It's wrong to hate people because of the colour of the skin or the religion. Absolutely, it's wrong to do that. But it's also wrong to hate somebody because they're British or English.
Absolutely. Is it fair to say? Is it fair to say? And I'm asking because I only don't know. I honestly don't know. But trying to play devil's advocate, not for violence, but for other arguments that have been made. Is it fair to say that the British Parliament, especially when you consider that Labour had a good strong hold in Scotland at one point, is it fair to say the British Parliament have let these countries down and have made things worse?
Yeah, I think what they've done, they've allowed. I think devolution was a massive. I think Boris is right about that. Boris said a few months ago that devolution is a massive mistake. He's absolutely right about that. What would we have done instead of devolution? Well, of course, one of the problems you had in Northern Ireland is that Sinn Féin, because of the hatred of the British, wouldn't return any MPs to Parliament.
Right.
So the only way they could get representation was in Stormont, and obviously even them sitting in Stormont, they do it, holding the noses. But I think devolution. I would like to see it come to an end. To be quite honest with you, I'd like to see just direct representation and strong representation in the UK Parliament, and strong arguments for funding and support for the economies right the way. I mean, I think Boris's tunnel's a good idea. It's interesting, the shrill voices that are screaming that Boris's tunnel between Scotland and Northern Ireland's a bad idea. I think it's a great idea, but as well as building,
I haven't thought much about this. You think it's a great idea?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think because what it does, it creates a physical link between Northern Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom, which is fantastic as far as I'm concerned. Now, however, before they even think about doing that, they need to get rid of the protocol. They need to get rid of this protocol, which is basically annexing us to the EU, and that's what this is. And this needs to be put aside. Another arrangement needs to be done. We can't have that. Hi, Steve. How you doing? We can't have that. We just can't have that happening. It can't be. It can't be allowed.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm sorry. I just noticed. By the way, I'll say that for later. I've just noticed sort of time's ticking away, and there was something. Well, there's a couple of things I wanted to ask, but something I wanted to make sure that I asked you because it's a question that I'm stuck on. From my own observations, from my own lifetime, and from reading some of Douglas Murray's work as well, all mixed together. I was a person that used to, I'll be honest with you, detest organized religion. And I'm not saying that I'm now all pro organized religion, but I do realize that perhaps my overzealousness was careless. And I realize now that for multiple reasons that we can't go into now, it would just take too long. There's certain people that may need religion, if nothing else, just from a practical point of view. And I look at the church and I think if the church had the strength that it had even 100 years ago, there'd be no mosques in this country. I look at a lot of the things we come away from Europe so that we feel more sense of self again, more sense of identity again. But again, I feel that people have lost that through religion as well. So the question I was going to ask you, regardless of my own feelings about religion, this has made me really think, is it possible? Obviously, religion has, like Reformation, has to be, relatable to the time. But can religion be, I don't know what the right word is, can it be reignited? Can religion be rebuilt in this country? Religion that isn't Islam, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really, really good question, Tom. And it's, to me, I mean, I'm not coming at this and saying I'm a great example of religious faith, because I'm not. I'm a very, very weak, failed Christian. I actually believe all of it. I believe what's written in the Bible. I believe in the deity of Jesus Christ. I believe in the sacrificial death of Christ on the cross, and I believe in the resurrection. I believe it all, literally. I'm a biblical literalist. My big problem is living it, not believing it. But and again, as a bad example of Christianity, I feel almost I've disqualified myself from talking about this.
Well, I don't think you're alone there. I think that probably there'd be more Christians that would be on your
Yeah.
side of the truth if they would be honest, you know. So,
but I think the question is and don't you've got to remember, Douglas Murray is a lapsed Christian. He's basically he claims to be an atheist now. I personally, there's atheist Steve.
I doubt that.
And I've had this discussion with Steve, and I've said I don't believe in atheists, you know, and that's what I always say to atheists. I don't believe
That's a good
I don't
one.
believe atheists
I like
exist.
that. I like that.
But putting that aside, most sensible, rational atheists that I know and speak to, and some people I'm very close to, who claim to be atheists, would admit that the what's called the Judeo-Christian heritage of the United Kingdom, which is basically based on the scriptures of the Old and New Testament, particularly the Protestant interpretation of those scriptures, are vital to the functioning of a proper civil society. And when you go through history, and yes, there's been a lot of blood spilled in the name of religion, of all religions, and religious totalitarianism, whether it's Roman Catholic totalitarianism, which used to be in the Middle Ages, or whether it's Islamic totalitarianism like we see today, is every bit as bad as well, maybe it's not as bad, but it's almost as bad as communism and Nazism. Totalitarianism is wrong. But what we had in England for many years was an amalgamation of sort of free church type people, reformed people, independent Pentecostals, Methodists, Church of England, and that was very, very strong, probably until about the 1950s. And for one reason or another, and obviously there's an innumerable number of reasons why it faded and why it fell away. A lot of it, to be honest, a lot of it was to do with Roy Jenkins and his what he called the Permissive Society in 1967, which was making divorce easy, you know, sort of pro-homosexual legislation. I'm going to get vilified for that one. Pro-abortion legislation, I'll be vilified for that one. But when that swathe of legislation started taking foothold in the United Kingdom, and then of course you had contraception and so on and so forth, a lot of those moralities started to wither away. Now, a lot of it was a false morality, and it wasn't based in real, true Christianity. It was a sort of, you know, wanting to look respectable and so on and so forth. And in a way, it's good that that's gone, because, you know, there's nothing worse than a religious hypocrite. You know, somebody that's pretending to be holy and living a good life.
Yeah.
And that's why I say I'm a lapsed Christian. I'm not living the life I should be living. And I'm quite open about that. And I do want to get back to, you know, on a personal level, I want to get back to Christianity.
I get that.
I think as a nation, just as on a personal level, when you go away from Christianity, there are consequences. As a nation, when you go away from true biblical Christianity, there are consequences. And from what I can see, and it's happening in the United States of America as well, which used to be an absolute hotbed of evangelical Christianity. And it's moving away from that at a rapid rate of knots. And look at what happens.
Here's the scary thing is that when you look at I've said this before, but not in this way. When you look at the fall of most of the empires previous to our own, one of the, I think, about 6-7 signs of an empire about to fall is they lose their religion, and then they will go into a state of spiritualism stroke depravity, and then within 50 to 400 years, depending on, you know, it will fall. And we are entering that sort of stage, or have been entering that stage for a while now, you know, with I suppose you could call it a global empire of sorts, or the West, or wherever you want to sort of draw the lines. But I think the West is the best way of putting it. The West is, I think we've been kicked out.
Have we?
We're back. We're back. I don't know what happened there. Sorry about that.
Yeah. No, Tom, I think that's absolutely right. I think you know, turning back to the Christian faith, specifically the Christian faith, and all that means, and you know, one of the things that I think would be an interesting project is if every school child had to read the Bible and had to study the Bible, not to be a Christian, but just to read those texts, particularly the New Testament, particularly the Psalms, the Proverbs, maybe the first few books of the law, Genesis, Exodus, that sort of thing, to have a handle on the faith that informed. I mean, we fought a civil war over doctrine in the United Kingdom. The Civil War was not just about the position of the king; it was about his interpretation of Christianity. He was Anglo-Catholic who was married to a Roman Catholic, and of course Cromwell was a Reformed Protestant. We fought a civil war over that, and so just for people to be informed about our own history and about where we come from, and about
this is the thing. The history and the religion is so intertwined. You can't.
Totally.
You can't. Yeah.
Totally.
You can't separate them.
If you don't understand, and this is the problem, if people don't have a fundamental understanding of Christianity, there's actually a very good book by Tom Holland, which I'd recommend to anyone. It's called Dominion, and it's a massive undertaking to read the thing. But if you read that book, Tom Holland goes right the way back to early Christianity and shows the influence that Christianity has had on all of Western civilization, right the way up until the present day, right the way up until, I mean, when you think about equality is a fundamentally Christian virtue, because if you read the New Testament, Paul says there's neither slave nor free, there's neither Jew nor Gentile, all are one in Christ. There's neither male nor female, all are one in Christ. So equality is fundamentally a Christian virtue. But what's happened with the identitarians is they've taken equality, they've perverted it, they've twisted it, and made it into something it's not. True equality is a good thing. The fact that we can say we're not interested in the color of your skin. The reason I say that is because the Bible says that. The Bible is a non-racist document. And anybody that tries to make out it's a racist document must be sniffing glue or smoking weed or something. Did
you take a look at this next comment on screen coming up now? Now this is quite a. Oh, hang on, sorry. It's quite a typical comment. Nothing new. There's nothing special about it in any way. So normally I wouldn't highlight a comment like this, but I'm doing so for a reason, and that is, let's just suppose for a moment that you're right and it's all fairy tales, okay? Then for the intellectual class, that's not going to be an issue. Well, I'm not saying it's not going to be an issue, but they will find other ways. And it can be argued that there are some people, like Sam Harris doesn't even believe in religion, but he does meditation every day. He believes in the spiritual aspect of being a human being. And the question is, to someone that thinks that way, is even if the books weren't 100% accurate, even if there were some fairy tales in them, I talked to you before we came on air, Richard, about how 10% of the world's population have an IQ of under 85, and they wouldn't even be employed at one time by the American army. If these books were designed, especially try and look at them in their day, to distinguish right from wrong. So when you've got that kind of problem, is it such a good thing to make such flippant comments when actually those fairy tales may make a story and an ethic and a moral understandable to someone that might not normally understand it?
Well, yeah, and sure. I mean, I think when you hear that sort of thing, I mean, if the gentleman that put that comment up there gets the chance, I recommend he goes and reads the Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and he'll find out where a godless society leads. I mean, if you read, people talk about fascism and the Nazis.
Did you say?
Yeah, the Nazis were dreadful. There's no doubt about that. But communism, which was an atheist religion at its core, is so disgusting and despicable. The two atheist ideologies that filled more graves in the 20th century, and probably going on into the 21st century if things keep going the way they're going. The two ideologies were atheistic ideologies. If you look at what Stalin did, you look at what Mao did, you look at what the current regime, excuse me, in China's doing, that's where atheism takes you. Look at North Korea, that's where atheism takes you. And
could you make the argument though that those countries, North Korea being a great example, are living deities?
Well, North Korea is an interesting example because Korea at the turn of the century, before the
Oh, we've gone a
communists.
bit quiet.
Can you hear me, Tom?
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, before the communists took power in North Korea, Korea saw a great Christian religious awakening, and now the fellow that's what do they call the fellow that's Kim Il Sung? Is it Kim Il Sung, the one that's running the show now? His great grandfather, I believe, was a Presbyterian minister. So when you turn away from religion, what you're going to get instead? I mean, if we turn away from Christianity, for example, you're not going to be left without religion. Look at the amount of churches in this country that are now mosques or Hindu temples.
The fastest growing religion in Britain is Islam. The fact that any religion's growing says there's a place for it.
Absolutely. And now, obviously, a lot of it's grown by immigration and birth rate and that sort of thing. But there are people converting to Islam. I mean, you know, there's some very, very sad stories of some of the victims of grooming in certain towns up and down the country have converted to Islam, which I think is tragic. But because everybody at some level has a deep yearning for love and has a deep yearning for belonging and has a deep yearning for what happens when I die. It's all right saying religion's fairy tales, but when you're lying on your deathbed, riddled with cancer, is your atheism going to help you? Is it going to bring you any comfort? Now, that's not whether Christianity is true or not. Is atheism going to comfort the man or the woman that's writhing in agony on their bed with cancer?
Certainly know a person that could believe it. It could surely just comes.
Exactly. Now, when people say religion is a fairy tale, and again, I don't want to get sort of too deep into theology. I mean, I basically studied the scripture for 20 years. And I didn't just study the Bible. I studied the background to the Bible. You know, a lot of apologetics, a lot of attacks on Christianity. So I had a pretty good handle on all the arguments. And one thing I do know, and I'm not gonna labor the point because there's no point. This isn't really the platform to do it. But most scholars of the Bible now, something that people outside of that sort of world won't realize. A lot of people study the Bible that aren't believers. So there's a lot of atheist biblical scholars. They just look at it.
I can back that up. Yeah,
it's a historical text, right? So they look at it as a historical text. Now, those scholars who have spent their life studying those ancient languages, studying those manuscripts, will tell you this is what the vast majority of scholars, probably 80 to 90% of biblical scholars, whether they're believers or not, will say this. They'll say, first of all, they believe that a man called Jesus was crucified. They will attest to that. They will say that happened. There's no doubt about it. They will also attest to him being baptized by John the Baptist, and then they will then say that all the early believers fervently believed that Jesus Christ rose from the dead, and they do that not from a point of view of faith. As atheists, like what's the fellow's name? I'll forget his name now, but there's a very, very famous atheist scholar that used to be on American TV attacking Christianity. He was
British guy. Do you mean Christopher Hitchens or?
No, it wasn't Hitchens. No, this guy was a scholar. Of one of his books. I can't remember his name.
Sam Harris.
No. Hang on, I'll try and find it now.
Okay.
Let's have a look. Oh, what's this guy's name? Hang on. You know what? I haven't got time. I'll take me to the next.
That's okay. So, but do you think it's
the point I'm making is it's not you know, this idea that religion is for simpletons and idiots is just not backed up by the truth. And some of the cleverest people I've ever met And I'll be honest with you, I don't think I've met anyone outside of these circles that have been on the same level of intellect, have been very, very strong evangelical Christians, and very together people. I mean, I definitely don't class myself in that group, but there's, so to say it's fairy tales, I would say, tell you what, go and read the texts, go and read the history. If you've done that and you still think it's fairy tale, hey, that's up to you. But go and look at all the information before you make those sort of crass.
And the thing is, well, is if anyone's saying it's done like that for for idiots or whatever else, it's like, well, like you just said, hang on, there's a lot of people who are very intelligent that are very religious.
Yeah.
The point with the stories is that they're universal. That being the point. So and the intellectual can take it to perhaps another level. Perhaps I don't need it explained that way, but the point is making the book universal, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I mean, if you don't take those texts literally, that's complete. It's completely up to people. I mean, the reality is, I've never wanted to force. You can't force someone to believe. I mean, it's something that happens. It's a supernatural occurrence. I was an atheist. I didn't believe in God.
Really?
Yeah. Well, both my parents were atheists, and neither of them are now atheists. My dad was a university lecturer.
How long? If you don't mind me asking.
Pardon?
How long have you been religious as opposed to not so?
Since 19. Let me get this right. 1996.
Right. Okay. Okay.
And I had what I can only describe as a supernatural experience, and I then couldn't deny that there was that God was real. I mean, I had a vision of a man being crucified. Now, I've never had that since, but it happened 3 times over the space of, I think, 3 or 4 weeks, and I wasn't drinking at the time. I didn't do drugs, so I just had this vision of this man being crucified, and it woke me up, and I started reading the Bible, and I've believed ever since.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I've always wanted to ask you about that, actually. So
yeah. So that's what 20 something 26 years ago or something like that.
Wow.
So
I like the fact that you've had an experience like that, but you don't come on and say, "Oh, I'm the perfect example of what happens afterwards." That is irritating to me, because we all know that none of us are. It's the fact that you're willing to sort of say, I believe this, but I think what you're trying to say in so many ways, I've got a long way to go to achieve it.
Oh boy.
Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Is that fair?
100%, Tom. I mean, I mean, I suppose the reality of all this is that it's impossible. It's impossible to basically to live up to the standard that God set, and that's the whole point of the Christian gospel, that basically Christ has lived that life for us and died for us, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day, in a nutshell. That we can't live a perfect life. We're fallen, we're failed human beings, and we continue.
I like Jordan Peterson's take. He says because when they try and pin him down on whether he's religious or not, I mean, I think he is, but he says, I choose to live my life as though God exists.
Who says this?
Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
He said, I live my life on the assumption that God exists, or I choose to live my life on the assumption that God exists. So he's not actually put himself out there, but you get the sense when you look at his works, he probably is religious. I like the way he's phrased that, and I like the way he's done that.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I think Jordan Peterson is a very interesting character, because he, like you say, says he's not religious. He spends a lot of time talking about. I mean, he's done a whole series of lectures on the Book of Genesis. I mean, so he spends a lot of time talking about the Bible, and I think he's.
Have you read 12 Rules to Life?
I got it. I haven't read it. No, I haven't read it all.
Very interesting for biblical references.
Yeah. I mean, I must actually go back to it again because
Yeah.
it's one of those ones that you know, it's like a lot of books. You pick them up and you delve in, and then you kind
You've
of,
got to be in the right. Yeah.
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 But yeah, and I think Douglas Murray's the same. I mean, I don't believe Douglas Murray's an atheist either. I think he's just
I think Douglas Murray is someone that maybe thought he was an atheist when he was younger, maybe thought it was cool. I don't know which, because obviously he kept company of people like Peter Hitchens and
that's
stuff.
right.
But
Yeah.
the more I see him in the debates, and the more I feel like, the more and more I feel like he's got uh, an actual affinity for religion.
Yeah, I met him in Belfast, and I spoke to him very, very briefly about that, and he was very, very gracious. He didn't
Right.
he wasn't antagonistic to what I had to say to him, you know, because um, you know, he probably thought to himself, who's this guy sort of saying, you know, you need to come back to God, you know, but no, I think Jordan Peterson, Douglas Murray, and a lot of those commentators, they should be a bit more vocal, because the reality is that if there was a turning back to Christianity, like you're saying, Tom, and I think you're very perceptive when you mention that the country is better for having Christianity in its rawest form, where it's like that, you know, in Northern Ireland. When I first came to Northern Ireland, you know, you'd walk down the street and someone would hand you a piece of paper with scripture verses on it.
Yeah.
And still today, you can drive around Northern Ireland and nailed to the trees are Bible verses. But you know, you're driving down a road where there's been loads of car crashes, and there'll be a Bible verse that says, "Prepare to meet thy God." That's Northern Ireland, you know? And it used to be more like that. It used to be, you know, you couldn't get away from Christianity and from the gospel.
And Danny Roscoe and I were having a conversation the other day, and it wasn't quite the same, but I do believe it overlaps. And it was that you know, with certain, let's just say, religions and ideologies and beliefs. So let's say this is some people say this is still a Christian country. Say in some sense a secular country. Let's say it's still a Christian country. You know, we were making the argument the other day that if you're excuse me, put up with the rules of this country and the philosophies and everything else, you see someone drowning. Oh, something's gone wrong with my phone. If you see someone drowning, one of the first things you're going to do is your instinct is going to make you want to go and save them.
Yeah.
And one thing we were talking about is that certain ideologies, some of the people who interpret Islam the way they do would stop first and ask whether you're worthy to be saved. And that applies to other ideologies as well.
Yeah.
And so when you look at
what I would ask, Tom, I would just ask if they're a member of Antifa.
Yeah. Well, remember,
I'm joking.
remember Antifa told me
if the guy was
would refuse to be saved by one of us.
I would go over, I would put my hand down and put my hand firmly on his head and pronounce the Aaronic blessing as I pushed him.
I was just trying to baptize him.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what it was. I was trying to baptize in 20 feet of water in a trench of downpour. No, I'm being flippant there, but I mean that's absolutely true, Tom. I mean, you know, the reality is within human beings that there should be that you know, whoever's drowning, you should be saving them, whether it's no matter what background he's from, or no matter who he is. Thomas, what if Islam is true? We're all in trouble, fella. That's for sure.
Yeah, and the other thing is as well with Islam, and I'll leave Richard to do the hard work here. But the thing with Islam is that Islam was taken from the Jews anyway. It was a stolen religion that then got changed, as far as I'm aware. Is that right, Richard?
That's absolutely. I mean, from what we gather, I mean, you know, again, I'm not a scholar. I'm not going to pretend to be a scholar, because that gets a bit cringy when you pretend to know more than you actually know. But
yeah,
there's a few points about Islam. The first thing is we've got to look at you've got to look at the people who are the founders of those religions. So if you look at Jesus Christ and as he's revealed in the New Testament, because all we can go on is the books that we've got. And what we've got regarding Christianity, we've got the books of the New Testament. So you've got the Gospels, and then you've got the epistles, and you've got the book of Revelation, right? And if you look at Jesus as he's revealed in the New Testament, he's loving, he's gentle, he's kind, he wants to heal people, he wants to raise the dead, he's self-sacrificial. Yes, he's coming back as king and Lord and judge in the book of Revelation. Right the way throughout the Bible, he is quite openly portrayed as man and God. He's fully man and fully God, and also he's portrayed as a loving God who cares for his creation and cares so much that he came down and became a human being, right? So that's Jesus in a nutshell. Then you go to the Quran, and you go to the Hadith, and you go to the biographies of Muhammad, and you're met with a monster. It's as simple as that. Now, if Muhammad is telling the truth, and his God is the true God that we should all bow down and worship, we're in big trouble. Because
and the thing is, the books get worse as you go through them, don't they? It's not like it starts off bad and then ends up flowers. It's probably the other way around.
It goes the other way around. I mean, Muhammad in Mecca is oh, let's be tolerant and let's all get along, because he's in the minority, and he's going to keep it quiet. He's going to keep it calm, just like certain populations do when they come to other countries. They're going to keep it calm. They're in a position where they can challenge the ruling authority and try and take over.
I mean, I kept getting told by Muslims that not all. Again, I have to keep saying that not all Muslims, bloody, it's the disclaimer generation we are. That well, you should ask the Jews what it was like living with Muslims X amount of years ago. They were happy. And I didn't know what they were talking about. So when I went and looked at what they were talking about was when they subjugated the Jews and made them a second-class
dhimmi status. I mean, and this is the thing that people dhimmitude. I mean, and it wasn't just the Jews. It was the Jews and Christians. Jews and Christians actually get treated better by the caliphate than the atheists and the polytheists and people that believe in other religions, because the Jews and Christians are allowed to become dhimmis. The atheists, the polytheists, and all other religions, they have a choice. They either become Muslims or they die. Now that's Sharia law. That's Islam. So, if people want Islam to be true, if people prefer to have Islam rather than Christianity, I think they probably need to go and see the same psychiatrist that Muhammad should probably have gone to see.
There's a page.
Muhammad believed he was mad. He actually believed he was mad. He
wow.
believed
Muhammad
was going to kill himself because he believed he was demon possessed. He believed demons were talking. So he's a very confused.
That's enough reason to go, okay, no more. I'm stick away from this guy.
And I mean, some of the stuff. I used to sit down with a guy called Mufassal Islam. Mufassal basically left Islam and then went back to Islam. I mean, he apostatized, and now he's apostatized back into Islam.
Oh wow! I didn't know that even happened.
Yeah. So, but Mufassal would have sat and absolutely. Mufassal would be on live streams like this with me, and he would say, Richard, Muhammad was a rapist. He was a murderer. He was an evil man. That's a guy that was. Mufassal was a Muslim scholar, right? He went and did dawah, Muslim Islamic evangelism. He went and preached about Islam all the way around India, Bangladesh, or wherever he's from. So that was his job. He was an Islamic evangelist, and he would tell me some of the stuff that was in the Quran. It was bizarre about Muhammad dressing in Aisha's clothes. You know that one? Muhammad used to dress in his 9-year-old child bride's clothes. He used to dress up in her clothes, and that used to get him aroused. According to Mufassal, and I'm led to believe that's in the Hadith. So, if we compare like with like, if you want to go with Islam,
people then try and say, it's to its time. Well, there's a couple of things there. One, even for its time, it was unacceptable.
Yeah.
And the other thing as well is that that book was said to be unchallengeable, was it not?
Oh yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
a lot of people,
Revelation,
a lot of
according
people
to
who I've had debates with about this, when I get onto the subject of Aisha,
yeah.
they will go around it until they lose their temper, and then I say, how old was she? And then they in temper say, old enough, and
Yeah.
that's where it all unravels. Old enough.
And of course,
So
this is a very fundamental thing. I mean, we're kind of going off on a tangent, but I think it's a good tangent.
sorry, yeah.
No, that's good, because I think this is a very, very interesting thing, because the massive problem that we've got with certain sections of the Muslim community in the United Kingdom is the grooming scandal, and people, these academics and people in the whole of scratching their heads, why are they doing this? Why do they think it? Well, they're not even saying it because they won't even speak it out loud. But other people are saying, I wonder why they're doing this. Well, if Muhammad is the perfect example for all mankind, which is what Muslims believe, they believe Muhammad is the perfect man. We should emulate Muhammad, even in the way we go to the toilet, in the way we dress, yada yada yada. Muhammad's he's the guy. He's the guy that we should all copy. So if Muhammad met Aisha when she was 6 and married her, and consummated the marriage when she was 9, and dressed in her clothes, and Aisha's friends used to run away from Muhammad because they were scared of him, and if Muhammad took sex slaves from some of the people that he murdered, which according to the hadith he did, if all those stories about Muhammad are true, and these, whether they're true or not, is not the issue. The issue is that the Muslims believe these stories. And if he's the perfect man, then in their view, there's no problem with doing what they do to little teenage girls.
Exactly.
In Keighley, in Birmingham. And I believe we're only scratching the surface with this. I mean, I've been looking at certain areas and what's been happening in certain areas. And believe you me, it's far worse than even we think it is when it comes to the grooming. I mean, Anne Cryer said she believed 1 million girls had been raped in the last 40 years by the rape gangs involved in rape jihad. So when you put all those things together, when you look at what Muhammad was like, they are emulating Muhammad. And if something is fundamental to what you believe, and this is why religion can be very good and very bad at the same time, if what you believe is fundamentally damaging to society that you live in and oppresses and subjugates the society you live in, then it becomes something very, very bad indeed. If Christianity, well, let's say religion as a whole, is a force for good, and it's promoting good morals, honesty, non-violence, peaceful coexistence, and all the sort of good stuff that you can get from the New Testament, then I know what I would choose. And that's the choice that people have to make, because we're not going to get no religion. We're going to get either
that's right.
violence that subjugates all religions and pushes this progressive agenda where anything goes, or you can have Christianity. And I know what I choose. I mean, that's,
The other thing as well is that, can we look at Islam and say that it's strictly a religion?
Well, it's a religion. Well, the thing about Islam, it's a religious and political system.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
I mean, if you look at Islam, and this is where Muslims are very confused, because the caliphate was basically destroyed by Western civilization.
Well, they have no church-state separation, do they?
No, exactly. But
right.
Of course, at the moment, there is state separation everywhere. There is no caliphate. Yeah. The only caliphate that they've had was basically in
Mosul
and Iraq and Syria for about 5 minutes until Trump went in and bombed the, Yeah. So the caliphate doesn't exist, and it hasn't existed since when was the Ottoman Empire defeated? The end of the First World War. So that's when the caliphate collapsed, after the First World War, when the Ottoman Empire fell and Ataturk came in as a secular Turkish ruler. Now, that's why I think Turkey is such a dangerous country, because under Erdogan, I believe Erdogan wants to come back as the as the caliph, and you know, that's why Iran's so dangerous. That's why Saudi Arabia is so dangerous. That's why Pakistan's so dangerous, because all these countries have vast numbers of people in them that believe that there should be a caliphate and believe that the caliphate should dominate.
Yeah. This is what people don't understand. I hear people talking about how Turkey, for instance, great example because I've spent some time there. People talk about how Turkey is a democratic country, even before more recent events of Erdogan. Let's go back about 20 years actually, and spend some time there at 3, 4 in the morning. I was hanging around with people whose language I couldn't speak and going to these little places of theirs and talking to them.
Yeah.
And I remember I just got married, and the way the conversation opened up was I was like, I've just got married, guys. It's 3 in the morning. I've got to go.
Yeah.
And they were like, why? And I was like, because I just explained it. Just got married. And obviously that's where the non-equality thing came in.
Yeah.
But the point of it was that Turkey's considered or talked about by Europe and everybody else like it's, or has been up until Erdogan more recently, has been talked about like it's a country that's so much more democracy than it is caliphate. When you talk to the people, it's bred out of them or into them, whichever way you look at it. So you could talk to a 16-year-old who's going for education in Turkey. And the one thing I remember one of them told me was he said, please let everybody know when you go home, we're not all the same. We're not, and I felt really sorry for this kid because he wanted people to know. But I also saw what was waiting for him. What was waiting for him was a kind of training where in a few years' time, he will be stopping for every single one of those, what do they call it, where they play Muhammad's voice. He'll be stopping for every single one of those. And he'll be part of this. And the nightlife was violent. There was, you know, it was just that a caliphate was already in it, what's the word, springing up.
Yeah.
Even then.
Absolutely. You know, and that's of course
dangerous.
You know, sponsored by, you know, by the Muslim Brotherhood, by the Saudis, and the interesting thing is, I mean, they all fight against each other anyway. But the point is,
sorry, that's a more moderate country. Was the point? That's one of the ones considered to be more moderate. You know.
Yeah, and what's happening is that, you know, if you look at what's happening right the way through Africa now, I mean, there's a bloodbath going on in Africa at the minute, and nobody's talking about it.
Yeah.
Mozambique, I think 50 people were taken out of a village in Mozambique last week, taken onto a field by jihadists and beheaded in the name of Islam, you know, because they wouldn't convert, because they're either Christians or whatever, they wouldn't convert, so they were just killed by these jihadists. Nobody's talking about that, you know, and everyone's talking about the Uyghur Muslims in China, but nobody's talking about the Christians in Banda Aceh. Nobody's talking about the Christians of Indonesia. Nobody's talking about the Christians in the Philippines.
You've got two things going on at the moment, haven't you? You've got one is the news cycles. One, they're going very quickly, but two, they seem to be. It seems like they only want to focus on one thing at the moment at a time.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that, again, you know, if it was happening to Islam, then the world would know about it, the same as they knew about George Floyd and everything else. So with those two factors working together, it was really good. Like when you said to me, you know, about perhaps bringing up, I mean, we did plan to talk about this, did we? But some things, you know, we talked about. It was important because there's so many big, important stories flying under the radar right now.
Totally. You know, and I think at the moment, I mean, I think there's so many threats at the moment. I mean, I think we're threatened. Communist China is a massive threat to the West. That report has been published about how they'd infiltrated Western universities, how they'd infiltrated the BBC, and it's absolutely incredible what's happening with China, and again, largely being ignored by the mainstream media. And of course, it's very interesting, isn't it, that Trump stood up to China, Boris stood up to China, and the two countries that are worst affected by COVID are the UK and US. And goodness knows, was it a biological weapon? I mean, there's one to throw out there. Who knows? It's been extremely effective in destroying Trump's presidency, and it hasn't really done much for the UK either. So, you know, that's one just to put out there. I mean, I'm not one of these people that. The other thing is actually an interesting thing. I'd love to know where the COVID deniers get all their information from, because it's very interesting that the Chinese sit very, very happily with COVID deniers, because the Chinese don't want to be found out for what they did, which was basically leaking a virus from one of their weapons establishments. And it seems very, very convenient that the COVID deniers don't see anything wrong in COVID and don't believe it exists, when the reality is it does exist. It's killed a lot of people, and it came from China. It came from the communist.
Yeah, I
Communist
saw
state.
someone talking the other day, and God,
Conspiracy
I wish
theory on
I
it.
could.
The people that don't believe in COVID could be actually buying into a
Yeah,
Chinese
yeah.
conspiracy to cover up.
I wish I could remember the person's name. I will look this up so I can try to send it to you. But they were talking about. They said it was. Oh, I'll tell you what it was. It was Brett Weinstein. He's doing these dark horse podcasts at the moment, where they're trying to look at these issues, and I like his attitude. What he's saying is they're talking about things that where there's enough evidence to at least, let's say, make it worthwhile the conversation.
Yeah.
And so I like that premise. And he was saying that that it very much looks like a lab leak.
Yeah.
And he said, but if it is a lab leak, then if there's blame to go around, that would then include China, America, the UK, and he named some other countries, because we're all working in that lab.
Yeah.
We're all working on the same things in these labs, which I actually didn't know at all.
Well, I mean,
So,
Porton Down. Yes, Joe, and I am on VK, but I don't really use it at the moment. Porton Down is our weapons, biological weapons lab now. Of course, we don't manufacture them in a large scale. But the thing about biological weapons, you don't need to manufacture them on a large scale. You just need to have a little bit of stuff to cause a huge amount of damage. But obviously, Porton Down's reason to exist now is to find antidotes to these viruses. So, we've been messing about with this stuff since the Second World War, to be honest. And Porton Down's been there as long as I can remember. It was there when it was a military place when I was in the army, and people used to go there and get injected with all sorts of strange stuff.
God, I mean, the stuff that you could buy years later that was in Portland Down, and that was incredible. Incredible.
Yes, I think the organization has a lot to answer for as well.
So there was one other thing we were going to cover, but obviously I know we've gone way over time. So I know that you're very, very busy. Would you like to leave it for another time?
What was it, Tom? Just so we can.
I can't pronounce his bloody name. That the guy that announced that Churchill was worse than the Nazis.
Oh, Kahindi Andrews, the delightful.
That's one. Thank you.
Kahindi Andrews is a completely vile individual. I think we should start a campaign to defund Kahindi Andrews, and he should actually have to make reparation to all the people that he's upset with his rambling nonsense that he spewed out. He's the professor of Black Studies, I think, from Birmingham University.
Richard, I'll be right back.
Okay.
Sorry, please keep talking. Sorry.
No, sorry, Tom. Yeah. He's professor of African Studies, as far as I know, at Birmingham University. And the thing about Kahindi Andrews is he gets a platform. I mean, if there was a white supremacist that had the views that Kahindi Andrews had, he'd probably be in prison. It's as simple as that. But Kahindi Andrews, because he's got the right color skin to have those sort of views, it's fine. He can come on and spout his racist nonsense and say what does he call? He talks about the psychosis of whiteness. Have you heard that one? The psychosis of whiteness. He says being white.
What? The psychosis of whiteness.
Psychosis of whiteness. That's what Kahindi Andrews' catchphrase was a few years ago. He basically said people who were white had a psychosis. In other words, everybody who was white has a mental illness, and this comes from this disgusting critical race theory. Now, what is happening with this? And these people, they must know that they're doing this. What they are doing is they're feeding racists. They're giving racists all the food that they need to dine out on for years. And people like me and you, Tom, and Danny, that don't see colour and genuinely don't see colour. We are the ones that will get marginalised. And what the extreme the extremists on the black rights side, the Black Lives Matter people, the people like Kahindi Andrews, what they are doing is they are deliberately feeding the monster on the far right so that they can have the confrontation that they want. And do you know what we'll do? We'll just stand by and watch the two of them knock bells out of each other, because I'm not buying into that. I'm not going to go down that road and get involved in that sort of absolute disgusting nonsense. I hate politics with a passion.
Hey, sorry, what? Sorry, say again.
I hate identity politics with a passion.
Yeah, me too. And seeing the right embrace, the far right embrace it the way they have.
Well, they always. I mean, they've always been into identity politics.
True. Yeah.
Just that's what Nazism was about. Nazism was about identity politics, and it's interesting that there's people on the very far right want to see Churchill's statue pulled down, and there's people on the far left want to see Churchill's statue pulled down. What does that tell you? They're both singing from the same.
Yeah, you go around that circle far enough, and they meet. They meet.
There's very little difference between National Socialism and socialism.
Yeah, and there's one word that wraps it all up: totalitarianism.
Yeah. Totalitarianism. Any form of socialism destroys society. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. And Kahindi Andrews, let's get him defunded. The thing is, he has little chats with Piers Morgan on a regular basis.
I knew his name had to come up sooner or later. Come on, let's talk about your favourite man. Come on.
Let's talk about Podgy Pierce. Well, Podgy, not that I claim to be a prophet or a son of a prophet, but a few years ago I made the comment that Pierce moron had political ambition. And lo and behold, at the beginning of the year, I think Tom's just fallen off his chair. Lo and behold, at the beginning of the year, Pierce moron basically announced that he's going to be prime minister, and he started a campaign, and the Daily Star picked it up, PM for PM. Now, I don't think that's a joke. I mean, I'm laughing about it, but I think and the scary thing is, I think Piers Morgan's deadly serious, and he is a populist. He jumps on any bandwagon that he thinks is going to get him applause. He's a bully. He's dangerous. I mean, some of the things.
When did you say this was reported? Sorry.
Pardon?
When did you say you first heard this? Sorry.
Oh well, I just made it up about 2 years ago. I just said Piers Morgan wants to be prime minister. I just said it on a live stream. I was just ranting, and I said, not my words. Piers Morgan's going to be prime minister one day, or he's going to try to be prime minister. And I think we need to do everything we can in our power to stop him becoming prime minister, because I think it would be a complete catastrophe for the country. Personally, I think he's either going to join the Labour Party and become leader of the Labour Party when Keir Starmer drastically fails, or he'll start some sort of new, supposedly middle of the road anti-woke party. But it won't be. It'll be a progressive party. It'd be like Blair. It'd be like Blair on steroids. And a fat podgy version. I mean,
all those was it GMTV does or whatever?
Good Morning Britain or something like that, isn't it? Yeah, it's one of those.
It's very interesting to compile those to see how many, because obviously the big stick is that he loses his rag with people. We get it, but it'd be interesting to see how many of those he's lost his rag with people on things that he's completely contradicted the last time he's lost his rag.
Oh, sure.
I'd be interested to know how many of those things that there are. I bet there's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I thought when Tommy went on, Tommy made absolute mincemeat of him. I mean,
Yes, it was brilliant.
Tommy was waving the Quran above his head, saying, "This is a cursed book. This is a cursed book."
And Morgan's reaction was like he was holding a baby in one hand, and
I think Piers Morgan saw himself in an orange boiler suit, had his knife round his throat, and of course Tommy doesn't care about that sort of stuff, so Tommy just cracked on.
Absolutely.
I thought that was quite entertaining. It was. It was.
The only other person that's entertained me talking to Piers Morgan was Ben Shapiro, and he made sure he brought a copy of the American Constitution for him.
Yes, Ben Shapiro. And I tell you who else made mincemeat of him. That rapper, was it Stormzy? Is it Stormzy? Is he the? No, it wasn't.
I'm not very good with
There
the
was
bloody.
and I can't remember what his name was. I don't think
I
it was,
know that name.
but anyway, he was like Tiny someone or other, isn't it? I don't know. Anyway, I don't know. I don't know. Needless to say, I don't know too much about rap culture. But he made absolute mincemeat of Piers Morgan as well, which was superb. Piers Morgan was trying to draw him on the Black Lives Matter debate, and he's like, "Listen, mate, I just want to play my music. Just chill out. Just don't worry about it."
Fair play. Fair play.
Very, very good. But
I like people who do that. They just take the whole argument away. Just take the whole argument away completely. And
I'd have him by the throat, and I'd be probably arrested for.
I feel sort of ashamed of myself because I've just come into contact in terms of reading material and stuff like that with a guy called Thomas Sowell in the last, I don't know, few weeks.
Okay.
And I remember mentioning it to Danny Rosk, and he went, "You don't know who this is? What's wrong, you man?" And he's right, absolutely. If any of you haven't checked this guy out, he's so spot on. He's so, and I don't just mean he's got opinions about Black Lives Matter and stuff like that. He really goes down and breaks it down from a historical point of view, and it's very, very. Like I keep saying Richard, and the thing I keep wanting to do in America, I think where they're that little bit further down the road. You've got a lot of people in America, but where you could say, I could easily go and pick videos off the internet now and find just as many people in America, black people, who would slag off Black Lives Matter, who would support them. Whereas in Britain, I don't think we've quite got there yet. I think we need to show people where people are at in America, and why.
I mean, well, that's where like Danny, when you look at what Danny's doing. Danny Roscoe, I mean, it's superb and it's very brave. It's like, it's like when I stand and talk about, I don't know, the IRA or Islam or, white supremacists or black supremacists, there's a risk involved in all of that. But you've just got to say what you believe, haven't you? And if people don't like it, it's tough. I mean, at the end of the day,
it's brave, but it's frustrating. It's frustrating because it's frustrating that he has to take that risk. When obviously we want to share it, and he has to take that risk. But obviously, I know, Danny. Sorry, I know you're in the chat, so I'm not talking about you. But but at the same time, I know he's prepared to take that risk. But I absolutely believe in it, in what he's doing, because I mean, one of the very things that you'd be doing is opening the door for us finally to have a movement where we don't need to ask people of a certain ethnicity to come anymore. They'll just turn up, and
totally. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's and the reality is that people talk about color and race. And the reality is everyone has prejudice. Like
everybody. Whether you pick them up your parents or
English people have prejudice. Scottish, we've all got prejudice in us. And it's not like we're thinking every single day about it, and we're kind of plotting to do bad things. But I would say most people, if they're brutally honest, from time to time say things that are wrong and do things that are wrong. It's just the way we are. It doesn't make us any worse or any better. It's just a reality of life. But what I hate is when people are building their identity on skin color, sexuality, religion, whatever it is. That's
any tribal group, to be honest. I mean, I've even seen people do it with the veterans. It doesn't matter if any group you are part of, it can be used in a positive or negative way. Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah,
so yeah. I mean, that's that. I guess that's all I want. I mean, I don't know about you, Tom. All I want is to live in a country that's moderate, that's peaceful, that's prosperous, that's proud. I'm proud of British history. All this attacking British history and attacking Churchill, it's just horrendous.
Permission to speak completely freely.
Yeah, exactly.
I want us to live in a country where we realise that at least 1,000 years of blood have been spilt for us to be here. What I'd like is some flipping gratitude.
Yeah.
From all of the generations that are alive now to enjoy it.
Yeah.
I'd like I'd like there to be so much more gratitude. I'd like there to be an end to this. Look, the idea that this new idea that borders create wars, absolute stupidity. All of this socialist stuff. I want us to reject it en masse.
The border down the Irish Sea might create a war if they don't sort it out.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true.
I agree.
But I want them.
All those guys that were saying no more borders 2 years ago, saying, for goodness sake, close the borders, we don't COVID getting in. You know what I
mean? I know. That's the funniest thing. So it's like people keep telling me I'm not going to get out of the country at the moment. I said, I bet I would if I was on a dinghy.
Exactly.
Sorry.
No, that's all. All I want's a peaceful country where my kids and my grandkids.
And I want the union. I want the union.
The union's vital. I mean, if Northern Ireland is put, if the loyalist people in Northern Ireland are pushed, they will go, and it will not be nice. I mean, it'll not be. I mean, it'll make anything that people have seen in England in the past few years look like an absolute tea party. You've not see when it gets bad over here. You don't. I mean, I don't want that. I want to see a peaceful, a peaceful democratic movement change the thing and to win people's hearts and minds, and to challenge the Republican narrative and the lies that the nationalists and the IRA are telling, and also the Scottish nationalists. But if Northern Ireland gets pushed, it could get very, very nasty very quickly, and that's what I'm worried about at the minute.
So I would like to see something similar to the separation between church and state, between church ideology and learning institutions and places of that. The reason being is that the freedom of religion has meant that we now can't exclusively teach our religion in our schools and stuff. So therefore, that's not something we're going to be. So what I would like is for none of it gets taught in schools. No creationist stuff in school. If we're gonna go down this path, rather than having catering for Muslim and other religions as well, rather than catering for all that and having a country where it's multiple countries inside a country. It's like a China doll of cultures. That it's not multiculturalism. It's just, I can't even know what the word is for it, really. It's segregation in a way.
It's absolutely segregation, and that's what's so dangerous. I mean, one of the big things that we don't talk about much anymore, and we should be able to talk about it, is the issue of mass Muslim immigration into the country. And I've always said I don't really have too much problem with people coming from even Eastern Europe if they share our values and they want to integrate and they want to be part of our community. I don't really have too much of a problem with that. I have a problem if they're just coming here to take advantage of our goodwill and take all our money and then scamper off home. But if people are coming here to contribute to our country and become part of the country, I think you should have, like in America, where people can swear allegiance to the flag, and I think they have that now, don't they? Citizenship ceremonies, all that sort of stuff. But the problem is with Islam. Islam doesn't want to do that. It doesn't want to integrate. It doesn't want to become part of the community. It wants to stay separate, and it wants to dominate, and it wants to rule. And
but I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. Just don't come here.
Yeah, exactly. Don't do it in our country. And it sounds like a sweeping generalization, and I don't want to come across as somebody who sounds like I'm bigoted. I'm not bigoted. I just don't want our country to turn into some sort of Saudi Arabia in the rain. I don't want that. I don't want this country to be dominated by Islam.
And I'm also willing to bet you're basing this on what you've seen happen already.
Absolutely.
And
what I've experienced when I was a youngster. Again, I mean, before I came to Northern Ireland, I lived in a town that was dominated. Not dominated, but had a high Muslim population, a Pakistani Muslim population, and the only set of people, the only group of people that I had problems with growing up, and believe you me, I didn't instigate those problems, were Pakistani Muslims in the school that I went to, and that was when I first started looking at Islam and realizing that Islam There's something not right about this. There's something very, very sinister about this. And I believe Islam is a sinister religion. I believe it's a very, very sinister.
Yeah. Takia is a good example of that sinister nature. See, Ginger said that they want us to submit. Am I right in saying that? Is it the word Islam, or is one? It means submit, doesn't it?
Yeah, they say it means peace, but it doesn't mean peace. It means submission.
It doesn't. Yeah, yeah.
Submission, you know, and it's I mean, it's absolutely, Tony. It doesn't belong in the West. What do we do? The problem we've got is this, right? What do we do about it? And no government and no political party is looking at this, apart from Anne Marie's with For Britain. What do we do about however many million Muslims there are in the country now? Maybe 8, 9 million. I don't know. I mean, who knows how many Muslims are?
Yeah, I mean, last time I looked, they were at something like 5%, and that was 2011 figures.
So it's probably double. So what do you do when 5 or 10% of your population, the vast majority of the men in that group, don't want to properly integrate? They have an elitist, misogynistic, supremacist mentality. What do you do? What do we do as a country without something horrific happening? How do we combat that?
Yeah, this is a question
I'm just putting the question out there, Tom. I don't know what we do about it.
Well, this is a question I said before. I said, if you imagine, let's imagine there's 6 people in a room, plus a 7th with a gun, perhaps, right? And this guy puts a gun to our head, and let's say there's a leftist there. I'm not going to pick the people; it doesn't matter. Just people who fundamentally disagree.
Yeah.
And I think we could say that for certain people that gun would be a motivator, and also that rationalism would shine through, and one way or another, people would reach some kind of consensus. But what do you do when? And let's say the state of the world was at fate. You couldn't leave this room without it being unresolved. So let's say you've got some radical Marxists, and they just, what it's like trying to sit down and have a rational conversation with them. So what happens in that situation? How do you fix the world's problems with these people without using violence? How do you get around that table, and then how do you make it work? It's I can't answer it.
I can't either, Tom. And it's.
I want to.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know. I don't know. I don't know what we do. And I used to think, if we got some sort of political power, we could basically clip the wings of Islam and basically stop, ban the burqa and, stop mosques opening and all that sort of thing. But I just don't see any will for that. And again, the British people have got to sleep. They were waking up to the dangers of Islam. And this is again where I find the far right so insidious, the white supremacist, racist far right so insidious, because they're not really against Islam. They and that's why they don't get banned from any channels, because they don't have the real elephant in the room. They'll speak about skin color or ethnicity. They don't speak about the elephant in the room, which is this terrible, dangerous religion that's causing all sorts of problems. And of course, Hitler himself thought Islam was great. He thought it was a great thing.
Whereas Churchill, from my understanding, thought it was I can't remember the exact quote, but it was pretty bad.
Yeah, he wasn't. Yeah, I know what you're saying. I can't remember. I remember that guy. What do they call the guy that stood on the steps of the council building and got arrested for reading the words of Churchill? Do you remember that?
Yes.
The Liberty Party. Do you remember the guy's name? I can't remember. But anyway, he's and everybody's gone very quiet about Islam. I was watching even what do they call him? Rod Little and the other guy, Brendan O'Neill, was saying, "Oh well, Islam's not really that bad," I'm going, what are you guys on? What are you talking about? Why have you caved in? And you just wonder what sort of pressure the intelligentsia are coming under. They know if they speak about Islam, they'll lose a chance. If I lost my channel tomorrow, it doesn't bother me in the least. At the end of the day, and forget about everything. So Yeah, I mean, I don't know, Tom. I mean, it's a big problem. To me,
See, I'm living out in a place that is it's a forest right on the edge of the New Forest. It's in the sticks, and so I remember Tommy saying a long time ago, you know, if you're out in the sticks with your middle class and your little private estates, or if you're just out in the rural areas, it may take longer to come to you, but it's coming.
mm,
And I've seen evidence suggest that that's true, but I'm not going to go into that yet because until I can back that up. But what I will say is, up the road there, there's only, if I was to say 12 businesses, I may be overcounting them. And in the last 3 years, Muslims have taken over probably a quarter or more of those businesses. Now, obviously, they're very polite and friendly at the moment, but the point, and again, you know, I hate to brandish everybody with the same brush, so just, I am being careful, but the question I asked myself straight away, with just putting aside all of the other things I've seen, is if anybody wanted to integrate with, why is it every area that you move into you feel the need to control, to take over, to have every
well,
business?
it's not just that, Tom. I mean, I've been looking into a grooming scandal in a certain area of the country,
Right.
and in that area of the country, 40% of the Muslim men were involved in the rape of children in that
How
particular
many? Sorry, what was it again?
40%, 40% of the Muslim community were involved in the
Disgusting.
rape of children. And you know, when you know who some of these people are, and then you walk into their takeaways and they're smiling and they're laughing and they're cooking you food, and being very friendly and being very anglicized, and they're putting poppies on their Facebook pages, but you know that they've been involved in the mass
That is
transit.
sinister.
You know, so when we think it's just small minority of extremists, to be fair to the extremists, I don't even know if the extremists are involved in the rape. I mean, I think they just want to kill us all. So,
Yeah.
so you know,
The thing
it's
is, as well, is a Muslim that is militant and that has killed for his religion or whatever else. You hear a lot of people say, "Oh, but that's not what a real Muslim is." Well, actually, there's an argument to say. There's a very strong argument to say that the guy that goes out and takes out a load of people on his way out, he has. There's an argument to say he's actually a model Muslim.
they are basing. I mean, whether you know, this is the question, whether it's a true interpretation or not. I think it is the true interpretation, but that's open to debate. But the reality is that when those people are committing those acts of jihad, they're doing it because they believe that Allah wants them to do it. So they believe they're doing the will of Allah, and this hasn't
Yes,
gone away. It's gone quiet. The dragon's gone to
that's
sleep.
gone. Yeah.
But the
I think
dragon is
people
still
as
there.
well are very I think because of the strength of belief, even for the believers, the strength of belief in this country isn't the fanatical strength that it used to be. And so I think that when people see other people with this kind of belief, they
They
don't
don't.
really believe that they believe it.
Absolutely, they don't.
You know?
They don't understand it. And I mean, you know, when the reason that I understand it is because I've seen it, you know, in Northern Ireland. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, I
Yeah.
know, you know, when I was very fervently involved in Christianity, thankfully there's nothing in Christianity that would allow. That's why it's a very safe religion. There's nothing that would allow you. It'd be very difficult to justify going and murdering someone in the name of Jesus. You know, it'd be almost impossible to do. People have done it, but you've got to stretch scripture a long way to go down that road. But you know, when you're very fervently following a religion, you will do things that seem completely crazy to people that don't follow that religion.
Absolutely.
I'm not about doing violent stuff, but I'm just about, you know, the way you behave in certain issues. So when a Muslim
Be right
believes
back.
that his God is telling him to go and kill someone in the name of his religion, of course he's going to do it because he believes fervently that that's the truth, and he's going to follow that truth. And I think that's, you know, that's the problem we've got. Are you still there, Tom? Have I lost you? Well, I don't know what's happened to Tom, but yeah, it's been good chatting to everyone on Tom's channel tonight, and Tom has completely disappeared, so I'm left on my own with this. But I think we've covered just about every single issue that we were going to cover. So I will take my. Are we back, Tom? You're back.
Yeah, my apologies.
I thought you'd gone to bed, Tom. So I was just saying good night to everybody.
I was bored of you, Richard.
Well, listen, I think that's maybe a good point to stop there, Tom. We've done enough to probably get ourselves hung, drawn, and quartered by the Liberati.
Oh, absolutely. Well, first thing is, I just want to say, I actually turned the chat off, and it hasn't worked, as you've seen. So I want to just say a massive thank you to the people who are both our normal mods and the ones that stepped up at 0 seconds notice to come and do this.
Awesome.
I also want to say thank you to the fact that most of the people that came on, I was watching. Most of the people came on pretty cool anyway. And so I just want to thank you all for just coming on with an open mind, listening and taking part. That's what this is all about, community and taking part. So really thank you, and thank you to those mods that have done that. And Richard, I always love speaking to you, but thanks for giving me the time especially when I know you're so busy.
No, it was great. I mean, I'm not doing a lot at the minute. I've kind of stepped back from a lot of stuff. I can't basically, do as much as I used to, because I'm that busy trying to set up businesses and do a lot of other stuff to earn some money. And hopefully, if it works, then I can fund activities for the movement and it's like a long-term plan. But the problem is, when you're in the middle of it, it takes up a lot of time to basically do that. Yeah. And we just got to keep fighting the good fight, Tom. And the reality is, we were talking earlier about if nobody's standing with us, we'll stand on our own. And I think we've got to be like that. We've got to say, here I stand, there can do no other. Because what we believe is right. And I mean, that sounds very arrogant, and people think, oh, that's that's what the extremists say. You think you're totally right. Well, we are right. And we stand for common decency and a moderate, good, patriotic United Kingdom that loves the country and wants to live in peace and wants to prosper and wants to do business and do well around the world.
Sitting on the fence isn't a morally righteous place to be, like people pretend. It really isn't. And it's people like yourself and say Danny Roscoe that's made me realize it's okay to actually believe like this, to think like this, and to say, no, I am right, and it's okay to say that. And I do want to say to people as well, please keep going over, give Danny Roscoe support, because obviously the bigger these channels get, the more effect we can have. And Richard's channel is in the description and underneath the video today. Please go. If you go into the amount of subscription Richard has, very respectable amount of subscriptions, but for the work that he's done and the orator that he is, it's disgraceful that there's not more people on this channel. So please go over and give Richard a sub, because he does some of the most amazing work in the movement. So please go and recognize him and do that. And just follow these people.
Yeah, well, again, thanks, Tom, for giving me the opportunity to come on and just share, particularly about Northern Ireland, because I'm very concerned about the situation here at the minute. And we do need the support of English patriots, and I mean boots on the ground outside these treacherous Tory MPs, constituency offices. Whatever we can do peacefully. I don't want anyone to do anything not peaceful, but civil disobedience. We've got to step it up on the civil disobedience, because I think we've been a little bit scared of getting arrested. And if you get arrested for carrying out a peaceful protest, trying to save the UK, well, so be it. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't want to get arrested or go to prison or get a criminal record. But the bottom line is, if that's what's happening in our country, and we've got to stand up and make noise, and that becomes crime, well, then we'll just have to take that on the chin. And
it's like I said to Danny when I was on his channel, and I got myself a little bit wound up, and I just said, you're scared of getting arrested, not to him, because obviously he's not, but you're scared of getting arrested. We're all scared. You know,
Yeah.
we are all scared, but there's a difference. It's like if you know that you're right and you know that something's wrong, how far are you going to prepared to stand up for it? And I don't mean committing violence against other people.
No.
It's allowing someone to commit it against you and put you in a cell when you
Yes.
know that you're right. You know,
Absolutely. Totally, Tom. And I mean, I remember the first time I came to England to do a demonstration in September 2017, and I met a lot, people I met then that I've been in touch with ever since. And I remember sitting at Gatwick Airport after I'd made one of my speeches outside Downing Street, and I remember sitting in the airport thinking, well, that's my life changed forever now, and I was totally right. It had changed forever, And but somebody's got to stand up and do this, and I'm not doing this. Believe you me, this is costly. This cost you a lot. And I'm not doing this for self-gratification or for self-promotion. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. And
Richard,
to be honest,
people,
I could do without doing it because it's you get that much grief, from all sorts of different sources that it's very,
so
very.
people trust you and they know that you've been around the movement a lot. So would you just reiterate that it does cost money? As in, when I say cost money, I mean out of your own pocket, and it does take time, and it is hard work.
It costs money. It costs you your reputation. You get slandered. You get grief from threats and all sorts of stuff. And
That's far right.
Yeah, and you also get noticed by the police as well. And I mean, at the end of the day, I'd lived the life of a model citizen for 20 years. I hadn't even been, I think the last time I got trouble with the police was like when I was 24 or something. I mean, like, I hadn't been, just been living a good life and basically, trying to make money for my family. And the reality is that we've been pushed because of what's happened in the country. And thankfully, but we've had some great victories, I mean, Brexit was a great victory.
Oh,
Brexit
absolutely.
Victory. And I believe when we were doing those demonstrations, the state took notice. Yes, I believe it was the movement was to a great deal destroyed by the state and by lots of different forces. But we've made some big progress, and we don't give up on it. We keep going, but we may keep going in slightly different ways. There's times when it's right to be quiet, and it's right to plan and to try and build business and get finance and make it so that it's, because one of the problems is you put loads of energy into doing something really quickly, and you run out of energy, and you run out of money, and you run out of time, and you're literally left completely destroyed on so many levels. And then you've got to go back, you've got to sit back, you've got to rebuild, you've got to regroup, and we maybe need to have say, well, we need to have a sort of 5-year plan of how we can rebuild this movement. I know time's short, and I know there's a sense of urgency, but we also need to strategically plan.
We do,
and how we get our way of thinking into the mainstream, because the far left and the far right are never going to be mainstream, right? They're always going to be on the margins. But what we believe is actually right. So how do we get that? What we believe has been pushed on the margins, but it should have been pushed on the margins because it's very, very good. So we need to get that mainstream. We need to have a voice for the working class people of the UK.
I'm hoping we're going to have some kind of right-wing media sooner rather than later that can hold its own against the big tech. Can I just pick up a point here very quickly before we wrap up? I see Danny's going to be speaking in Swansea on the 27th as a counter demo to BLM. Anybody who can support him, who's willing to take the risk, share the risk, please do so. And I see someone else saying in the comments, what's the point? You'll just be cast as far right white supremacist Nazis or whatever the exact comment was. Well, good luck trying to do that to Danny Roscoe. Good luck trying to call him a white supremacist. Good luck trying to call him a Nazi. So there's always a point, and I absolutely support him in doing what he's doing. And if they want to try and paint Danny Roscoe as a white supremacists, we can all fall around laughing afterwards. So that's brilliant, you know. So
yeah, that's actually how they could call Danny.
yeah,
I mean, you know. Anyway, I
yeah.
mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, yeah. So yeah, Danny, go for it, mate. Fill your boots. You know, we support you, and let's say, you know, when I'm over again, we'll have to sit down, have a beer, and have a bit of crack. You know, it's yeah, be good to see you. But and you as well, Tom. We'll have to
Yeah, been
get
too long,
together.
mate.
But then again, you know, who knows when we'll be allowed to travel and fly?
I
mean,
know,
I
I know.
think if I drive more than 5 kilometers away from my house, I get arrested. You know what I mean? We're all in the house.
Listen, thanks once again for joining me tonight.
Yeah,
Really
no,
do appreciate it. Really appreciate your time.
yeah, it's
And
always good.
once again, thanks to everybody else as well. Just before I clock us off, is there any other message or links or anything you wanna say before we go?
Just we need support when it comes to this Northern Ireland thing. Excuse me, it's a threat to the entire UK, and it needs to be. If we put boots on the ground in London and in the constituencies of these, I mean, Glenn Safford was on earlier. I think Glenn lives quite close to where one of these miscreants is MP. If we get boots on the ground, I think they will have to listen, and they will have to really what they're doing, because it will scare them. It will scare them if people are in their constituencies threatening. The thing that the Tory party is scared of most is losing votes. So if we can cost them votes in their constituencies, that will be a big step forward.
Yeah,
I think
it's almost like a guerrilla warfare tactic that could work. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. You know, it's and you can do things peacefully without you know, doing anything crazy, and achieve a better result than if you'd done something really stupid. So yeah, that's my take on things. So let's hope. I mean, I'm going to be talking to more people in England about this, about how we can organise English people to stand for Ulster.
But the good thing is, as a way out of the conversation as well, the good thing is that I've been speaking to a lot of people, and some of them have some ingenious ideas that are passive, non-aggressive, and yet are wonderful PR. So I'm speaking to some people about some wonderful ideas at the moment. So, you know, it's not.
Let me know on that. I'd be really interested in that, because that's. I mean, we need some, you know, some good civil disobedience that will get a lot of publicity, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
But listen.
Okay.
Great. Perfect. See you all
Thanks
soon.
so much, Richard. I really do appreciate you coming on. I still won't be taking you to any funerals though. And to everyone else, thanks for watching. This is my guest, Richard Inman. I am Tom Shuri. This is Zero News, and I am calling it down. I'm calling it a day now, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Mammoth one, brilliant, really good fun.